Okay, guys, I just wanted to take a few minutes and tell y'all about a dream that I had. I'm trying not to make these videos so long, so I'm just going to cut to the point. This was a dream that I had like a few years ago, and as I mentioned, it's not an excuse, but I've been so busy with work and, everything in my life that I was like, I'm gonna sort through these videos and start releasing old dreams and old things that I've had. But honestly, like, I have just been so overwhelmed with trying to sift through them all and working and all that. So please pray for me in that department, that I find a good balance so that I can continue to release these videos. But I wanted to tell you guys about a dream that I had a few years ago, and it had nothing to do with my life, nothing to do with my testimony. It was just something that God showed me about what was going on in part of the world. So I live in Houston, Texas. I'm pretty close to the border, right? Like, not super super close, like El Paso or something, but Houston is pretty close to the Mexican border. And whether you're watching this and you're a US citizen or whether you're watching from a different country, I'm sure you've probably heard about the issues with our border and drugs and gangs and all of that. Like, it's been going on for a really really long time. But in this dream, I feel like God showed me a specific principality that was over the region of the US-Mexico border. So for those of you who don't know, in spiritual warfare and when you're talking about demons and that kind of thing, a principality is typically a high-ranking regional spirit. So principalities are a little bit harder to combat in spiritual warfare because a lot of the time you just have to pray for protection, to the best of my understanding, and I'm still learning about all this, but you have to pray for protection from principalities more than you're able to cast them out, because typically they have a legal right to be over an area due to whatever activities or whatever are going on in a specific area. So, like, there can be principalities over neighborhoods, principalities over regions, countries, even like streets. Like John Ramirez, if you listen to his testimony, and he's a former high-ranking Santeria warlock, like, he will tell you that when he was practicing all of that, he's now an evangelist, so I encourage everyone to look up John Ramirez's testimony. But he will tell you that principalities can even be over like streets or neighborhoods, right? It's a regional spirit that typically, for one reason or another, has a legal right to be over an area. So it's combating that is a bit more complicated sometimes. But with the U.S.-Mexico border, God showed me that Leviathan, interestingly, Leviathan, which typically can control misunderstandings in relationships, that has a lot to do with pride. If you read the book of Job, Job references Leviathan. I think Revelation might also reference Leviathan. But most people interpret from the scriptures Leviathan to kind of be like a dragon-like sea serpent type deity that is typically operating in more of like a principality function, that has a lot to do with pride. Like, Leviathan is very closely related to pride, to like destroying relationships, like marriages, any kind of relationship between two people, like twisting words. A lot of that is the Leviathan spirit. However, we know that, like, there's only one God, right? Who's, Jesus Christ and God the Father and the Holy Spirit, right? The Trinity. But every other God and every other religion, like, people will say, oh, well, I prayed to this deity and this thing happened. It's like, yeah, because you're dealing with something supernatural. Not everything is just an empty idol. Some things, I mean, everything that's not Jesus, if you're getting some kind of supernatural interaction with that thing, that's demonic. It'll be demons masquerading as gods, right? So in this dream I had, Leviathan was presented as Quetzalcoatl, which Quetzalcoatl is, it's a South American indigenous type of deity that is like a serpent, right? Like, it's a feathered serpent typically if you Google Quetzalcoatl. But Quetzalcoatl is just another presentation of Leviathan, okay? That's what I learned. So I'm gonna cut to the chase. I had this dream, and I knew that I was in a drug warehouse on the US-Mexico border. And I was walking through the warehouse, and I assume this was cocaine, probably, but there were bags that were like yellow wrapped, kind of taped bags. They were yellow. I don't know why they were yellow. Maybe that's how it's done, I wouldn't know. But there were just stacks and stacks of yellow bags of what I assume was cocaine or some other illicit drug. Kind of like if you go into Home Depot or Lowe's and you're in like the outside garden section, how you have those really tall racks that are stacked up with all this outdoor gardening supplies. It was like that, but it was an indoor warehouse, and it was all just bags and bags of these like yellow plastic bricks type of thing, okay? And there was a boy who was working in the warehouse, and he looked like his skin tone, his the way he looked, the way he was dressed, he looked very like he was Mexican, or he was Latin, you know, of some kind, you know, some nationality, some Latin nationality, I should say. But the first thing that struck me was that he was way too young to be there. Like, this kid looked like he was probably like 14. And it made me sad in the dream, but he just looked like a normal kid, like he should be in school or something, but he was like working in this warehouse. And I'm walking through these rows, and again, like, I knew in my mind that this had to be like near the border or around the border, because the drug trade, I'm sure a lot of y'all know, does not just start in Mexico and go up through the US. Like, a lot of the time the drug trade will start farther south and work up. That's why, not to get political here, because I'm kind of not super political. However, a really, really strong US-Mexico border actually provides protection to a lot of poor people in Mexico, because it prevents drug traffickers from like Colombia, Venezuela, like a lot of southern countries like El Salvador. If they know that they can't infiltrate and get through to the US, they won't bother messing with Mexico or trying to get Mexican teens into gangs, or like this gang warfare or crime that happens where a lot of Mexican people die on the border. It's a lot of the drug wars that have to do with countries that are not actually Mexico. They're farther to the south. So that if we have a strong border, they're not going to try and even mess with Mexico. I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but that's another angle to that whole argument with like having a really, really, really strong border, the whole border wall thing. It actually is protective to Mexico as well as to the US, but that's separate. So basically, back to what I was saying, I'm standing in my dream in this warehouse with this boy, and he is just complimenting me, like laying it on thick, y'all. Like, he was like telling me, oh, you're so smart, you're so amazing, you're so this, you're so that. And I was like, this is weird. Why is this kid just complimenting me? But I was like, he was a nice kid. And again, he was about 14. I was like, this is like a nice boy. Like, he's sweet. But I was like, that's so funny. Like, why is he just laying it on so thick? Like, all these compliments. And then he has a phone in his hand, and I look at the phone, and as he's scrolling, there's just these pictures of like dragons and serpents. And like, I mean, y'all, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pictures. So as he's talking to me and just complimenting me. And remember, Leviathan is the spirit of pride, or it's a principality that has other spirits that can operate underneath it, but it deals a lot with pride, right? And ego. So I found that interesting. So as he's complimenting me, I look at his phone and I see he's scrolling through all these pictures of like dragons, serpents, Quetzalcoatl, all of these different kind of manifestations of serpents, dragons, snakes, that type of a thing, right? I'm like, okay, this is Leviathan. Like, at that point I figured it out. And I got this visual in my mind of like a snake that was sort of crossing. So like, if this is the US-Mexico border, like through the southern United States, down through Mexico, down through the countries south of Mexico, but it's almost like I could see it like a bird's eye, like a snake. And I don't remember if that was like in the dream or right after I woke up, but it was very obvious to me that it was a warning about the principality of Leviathan that is linked to the drug trade in the southern United States through Latin America and into some of South America. So that was the warning. Leviathan is not what I would have pinpointed if I was analyzing like, what do I think is operating here demonically, but that's what God showed me. And that was pretty much all there was to the dream. Like, nothing happened. It was just this really, really young boy who was too young to be involved in all this stuff. He was in this warehouse. There were these yellow drug bricks everywhere, and he was complimenting me, and going through his phone, just looking at all these pictures of snakes and dragons and all that, where it was very clear. And again, Quetzalcoatl, it's like Quetzez. I'm not gonna try to like mess this up, but if you Google like Quetzalcoatl, That's like an ancient deity through South America that is demonic, and people have like reported seeing that deity. Like people have seen it, like modern day they've had experiences, but they think they're talking to a god, and we all know on this channel, like, we can acknowledge like it's demonic. But you know, that is like the even like the spirit of Python, any kind of snake spirit is very closely tied with the indigenous Americas and with their mythology. So it makes sense that demonically this is what was presented to me in my dream. So I mean, the drug trade and drug traffickers, obviously that has a lot to do with pride, a lot to do with ego, territorialism, but this was a little bit deeper. This was almost, as I mentioned, Leviathan is famous for messing up relationships, right? Like between two people, twisting words, twisting things, causing conflict. Like a lot of divorces are caused by Leviathan. So obviously our relationship as the US with a lot of South America, Central America, Mexico, you know, like that's all strained. So yeah, like North America being Mexico all the way down through parts of South America, we have strained relationships because of the drug trade. So I saw this type of visual, and I think it was interesting to me. But it definitely had nothing to do with my life. I've never been involved with drugs, never anything like that. I have no knowledge or anything of that. So if you do, please comment below. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. But that is what God was showing me as operating as a principality. Leviathan presenting itself traditionally, but also as Quetzalcoatl, which is a South American deity found in a lot of indigenous tribes. So yeah. I hope you guys have a good day. Bye.